All right. After talking about the basic sort of traditional theory of knowledge, I wanted to do a really short little lecture on the classic counterexamples to the justified true belief account of knowledge, right? And these are called Gettier cases or Gettier cases. So, question: is knowledge justified true belief? Here's Edmund Gettier, or Gettier, depending on how you pronounce it. I think it's French. Interesting guy. As far as I know, he only ever published like 2 or 3 articles in his entire career as a philosopher. Uh, and it's almost comical because usually you have to actually publish in order to can get tenure or keep your job as a an academic, as a professor. And he only really published a couple of things, and in fact the article that we're going to talk about that he published was only like 2 pages long, but it's been so influential in the history of the last half century of philosophy that basically it alone got him tenure. All right, so remember the justified true belief theory of knowledge. Knowledge is, by definition, according to the classical theory, justified true belief, where justification is like having a good reason or having evidence, a good enough reason, having your belief backed up, having it be absolutely reasonable or rational in some way. True, the belief has got to be true, meaning that it corresponds to the facts, and it's got to be a belief that you have, right? So you've got to have a belief, which is an attitude towards a proposition that you accept as true. The belief has got to be true, and it's got to be justified. And that's the thought is knowledge is justified true belief. Now, analysis and counterexample. So is knowledge justified true belief? Basically, what we're going to do, or what we're thinking, if we're going to give a counterexample to this identity that knowledge is justified true belief, we need to see if it counts kind of both ways, right? So here's how we check that. We check if intuitively something counts as knowledge, but isn't justified true belief, right? So if something, say, seems to be knowledge, but it isn't justified, then JTB is out. If something seems to be knowledge, but it isn't true, then it seems to be out. If something seems to be knowledge, but there's no belief there, then it seems to be out. Now, all of those are pretty difficult to give. It seems like, for various reasons that we already went over, you do need, in order to know, you need to have a belief. It needs to be true and it needs to be justified. So at the very least, it seems like we've got those necessary conditions for knowledge. Those are all necessary for knowledge. The other way, though, is this question of whether or not being justified, having a true belief, having a justified true belief, is sufficient for knowledge in all cases. That is it possible ever to have a justified true belief that doesn't count as knowledge? Intuitively, if you have something that's a justified true belief that isn't knowledge, then the analysis of calling knowledge just justified true belief is wrong, because you need to add something else to justify true belief. Gettier basically gives this counterexample. He gives a counterexample that justified true belief, that is justified true belief, but intuitively isn't a case of knowledge. So he's going to say that the JTB analysis is not sufficient for knowledge. So here are the examples. Gettier gives a couple of examples that I absolutely hate. If you want to watch some of the other videos or read up on the Gettier case itself, go ahead and look at his examples. I'm going to give you much more intuitive examples. The sheep in the field behind the rock, the static electricity pyromaniac, and the fake barn county. These have all been given by people. All right, so sheeprock, really simple. Imagine you are driving in the country and you look out across a field and you see something that looks like a sheep and you think, there's sheep. There's a sheep in that field. That is your belief. You come to believe, there's a sheep in that field on the basis of your seeing something that looks like a sheep. Now, it just so happens that the thing you're looking at is a large rock that happens to have, some white moss on it or something like that. But right behind the rock is a sheep. Now, what's going on here? Well, it looks like you saw something. On the basis of that thing, you came to have a belief, right? So you came to believe that there's a sheep in the field on the basis of having seen the rock. you are, justified in the belief that you have because the thing looks like a sheep, right? You come to believe that there's a sheep in the field. The thing looks like a sheep, and so that gives you some sort of justification for believing that there's a sheep in the field. And it's true that there's a sheep in the field. Question: is the belief that you have, the justified true belief that you have, a case of knowledge? Do you know that there is a sheep in the field on the basis of having seen a rock that looks like a sheep? Of course not, right? You have a justified true belief, but you just kind of got lucky, right? It was almost an accident. The static pyrotechnic or pyromaniac. Static Pyromaniac has a box of matches, and he's lighting them in these certain conditions. And basically, he thinks that they're dry, and but they just so happen not to be in this case, right? So he has good reason because he's kept them very, very careful, like safe, and so he's done all he can to keep them dry. It just so happens that they accidentally got a little bit wet. But then when he goes to strike one of the matches, a bit of static electricity from his shirt kind of jumps onto the match, and it lights. Now, he seemingly was justified in believing that his striking the match would light the match. And he believed, so he believed that he was going to light the match, and the match ended up lighting, right? Now, the problem here is it seems like he got lucky, right? He believed that the match was going to light because he thought that it was dry, but it wasn't dry. However, the static electricity helped cause the match to light even when it was a little bit damp. So, question: did he know that the match was going to light? Well, he had a justified true belief that the match was going to light, right? He believed that the match was going to light. The belief was true. The match did light, and he seems justified. He had a good reason for thinking that the match was going to light. He thought that the matches were dry. All right. Finally, fake barn county. So let's come up with somebody. Kevin. We've got Kevin, and he's driving through Kentucky. And he's driving through a very funny part of Kentucky that he doesn't really realize he's driving through. And so he's driving. He pulls over, and he sees what looks to him to be a big red barn. He believes it's a big red barn. He's looking right at it. He just so happens to be in Fake Barn County. In Fake Barn County, pretty much like 80, 85, 90% of all of the barns, or of all of the things that look like barns, are actually just barn facades. They're, those like lean-tos where it's just the front and it kind of looks like a barn, but really it's just there to like hide something behind it. And it's not really a barn at all. It's just a barn facade. It just so happens, though, that the one spot that Kevin stopped and the thing he's looking at is actually a barn, right? It's one of the few real barns in Fake Barn County. And he's looking right at it, and he's believing that it's a barn. Now, the basic thought here is supposed to be something like, well, Kevin doesn't know that he's in Fake Barn County. We do, though. And so issue. Looks like Kevin has a justified true belief. He's believing what he sees. However, he's got a good reason to believe what he sees. He's seeing it, and it's actually true. He is seeing a barn. However, he's in Fake Barn County. That seems to be, a count against him in some way. It doesn't seem like he really knows that he's seeing a barn, even though he has what seems to be a justified true belief. This case gets a little bit more complicated, and so this is one where some people buy it and some people don't, but I think it's an interesting one. Solutions. Are there any solutions to this issue? Well, people have tried and given all sorts of different ideas of what you can add to the justified true belief theory of knowledge in order to fix it up, right? So the idea is basically take justified true beliefs and add some other condition, like that there are no defeaters, meaning like things that could count against the belief, that the justification comes from a true basis, meaning that you can't have like a false belief that gives you justification for the belief that that you think there are tons and tons of possible solutions that people have given. Nobody has made any consensus that any of them really work specifically. There is no consensus. So, however, what there is consensus about is that there has got to be some other condition, right? Pretty much, not everybody. Some people don't think that the JTB analysis of knowledge is right, but for the most part, everybody accepts that if you know stuff, then you have to have a justified true belief. But you also, they think, have to have something extra, whatever the X is, beyond justified true beliefs, that solves for the Gettier problem itself. I hope that was interesting to you. I think it's a fun little game to play, and it sort of helps everyone to see how philosophical analysis goes, and what the method of counterexample is for philosophical analysis.